The reason why a simulator can produce a free energy circuit that is supported by the theory of electrodynamics and nonlinear dynamics and electrical reactance, but maybe not by thermodynamics, is because the simulator and that circuit not work in the real world when you go to build it. The reason why is because the simulator assumes that all of the components are in constant communication with each other, even when the circuit is dead. All right? Now, this is the way space works. Space, there's constant communication throughout space because space is a dielectric. And like any dielectric, when you put a charge into a dielectric, it doesn't matter where you put it, it's everywhere in the dielectric. It's only the plates of the capacitor that determine where you remove the charge from and what the nature of that charge is going to be based on the location of those plates with respect to, or by comparison to, all the other conductive surfaces in the universe. And every shell of every electron, of every atom, is a conductive surface. It's only the valence shells, if they're depleted, that become receptive to becoming hypersensitive to what's happening in their environment because they care, because they're hungry. But an electron, by its nature, is a conductive surface. The shell of an atom filled with electrons is a conductive surface. And so we've got all this empty space acting as a dielectric, and the only time we know about it is when we have atoms in existence, two or more, to determine 2 points in space that are electrically conductive. And in between those two spots, we have the dielectric of space bounded by those two points in space. And that boundary condition, inside of that boundary condition, we have information that we've stored that we call potential that we can put in there and read back out with the help of those two atoms, the electrons of those two atoms. But without the electrons of those two atoms, we wouldn't know what's in between those 2 points of space because we don't have any matter in those 2 points to read what is in there in space. Now, the simulator treats a dead circuit the same way space is. It assumes that the circuit can communicate with all parts of the circuit simultaneously as if the circuit were a dielectric medium. It's not. It's not space. It's the expression of space insofar as it's manifested as matter, components, material components, but it treats it as if it were space, as if it has dielectrical qualities of instantaneous communication between all parts of the circuit, even when it is dead. Now, this is very significant, especially if the simulator is Paul Falstad's simulator and it gives this uncanny additional property to the dielectric of its space of magnetism. Then it gets really hairy and complicated. But in the SPICE family of simulators like LT-SPICE or Microcap 12, when it was still being sold and serviced before the guy retired and took his money and wealth with him, they are strictly restricted to a dialectical presumption of communication among the components all the time while the circuit is running. It has dialectical communication. It has instantaneous communication with all parts of the circuit, with all components of the circuit. The behavior is made to look like a bunch of dancers on the stage who are reacting to each other's actions. But the simulator has to tell all the components simultaneously at the start of each time interval what to do. And that means the consequence of that is that there is the equivalency of dialectical communication among all the components, even though they are not in charge of themselves. The simulator is in charge. But to get the message to them instantaneously makes it look as if we assume the simulator's not there, which most of us don't, which is a big mistake, but when the simulator's not there, and so they're somehow communicating with each other in simultaneity of no time loss of communication. Well, yeah, because the simulator's telling them what to do. So we have to treat a theoretical simulation as if there is dialectical communication going on among all the components, instantaneous communication, or else we're not going to be able to understand how to make the darn thing work in the real world when it comes time to convert that simulation into a real world build. Now, I did experiments along these lines using microcap 12. I can't seem to do it in Paul Falstad's simulator because there's added complications making it all screwed up. But in SPICE, it works like a charm, and this is what you do. Once you get your free energy simulation working the way you want it to work, so you got to get to that point first, the last stage to tidy everything up, to get it ready for a real-world build, and to test to see whether or not you can build it in the real world, is to take every single node. That's a electrical engineer's term. It means an electrical junction. Every single node, and the SPICE, the microcap 12 will tell you what all the nodes are and will number them for you because it numbered it for itself. You can turn that flag on and it'll say, oh, node number 1, number 2, all the nodes are numbered. So you number them all, you tell it to bring it up so you can see it, and then one by one, you connect each node to a capacitor, let's say 10 picofarads, pick a number. I don't know. You find out what works. Or you might pick a very large number. Maybe that's what works to retain the over-unity of your circuit, because that's ultimately what you're shooting for here. But we want to build it, so we want to see if it will work as a real-world build with this crutch in place. So we're putting in some crutches here. And so we're connecting a capacitor to every node, and then the side opposite the connection, the other side, we connect to a spark gap of some kind. It could be a neon bulb in the case of microcap 12. And then the other side of that spark gap goes to ground. And we do it one at a time, and then we run the circuit simulation to see that we haven't messed it up. Okay, so we got to do it one node at a time. It takes time. If the circuit is complicated and has a lot of nodes, it's obviously going to take a lot of time and a lot of work. Now, the other stipulation is that when we get to our second node and add our second capacitor, it has to be exactly the same value of parameters, whatever those parameters might be, particularly the capacitance parameter, but all of them have to be exactly the same as the first capacitor. If it doesn't work, then we got to change the parameters of the first capacitor. It has to work in both. And then what we do when we get to the second capacitor, we create a shared node that connects the far side, the outside face of each of those two capacitors to the spark gap. So the side of the spark gap opposite the ground is a shared node between the two capacitor conductive plates that are opposite the junction side that joins with each of two respective nodes of the circuit. That outside face of those two capacitors must be a shared node connecting them to the same spark gap or neon bulb, whatever it happens to be, which goes to a singular ground. So we have one ground, one spark gap, but many capacitors connected to that spark gap. And each of those capacitors go to its own respective node of the circuit. Once we've done all the nodes of the circuit and we make sure it still works as over unity, it's going to behave a little differently, obviously, because we've changed the circuit. But if we did everything right, and the circuit we were connecting, the over unity circuit that worked fine before we started to make it complicated in this manner, should still work, but it should get a boost. It should be minor by contrast to the behavior of the over unity circuit, but it will get a boost of efficiency, and you're going to have to readjust the parameters of your circuit to accommodate this new condition of improved efficiency. But it'll still work if you do everything right, if you're lucky, or just smart enough, or both, really. And this, with all of that crutches, that scaffolding, shall we say, because it is a type of scaffolding, all of that scaffolding will act as a crutch to improve efficiency of your circuit, but you're going to have to build it with that scaffolding in place. Because that's and then, if you're lucky and smart enough, figure out how to make adjustments to your circuit so that you can remove the scaffolding, and your circuit will still work in the real world. But see all the steps you had to go to get there. And that's not even counting the steps you had to go through to get the thing to work without the scaffolding, because you're doing it under simulation. And that's how you do your conversion into the real world. And once you get good enough, you won't need a scaffolding. You'll just know how to build it once you've designed it, because your brain has been programmed to know what to expect. It'll have all the future steps in mind, so that when you design your over unity circuit under simulation, you'll know what to do ahead of time, so that you won't have to go through the scaffolding step to make it work in the real world. You won't have to. To make it work with a crutch of scaffolding, you won't have to. I've never reached that step because I've never built anything. You have to be in the phase of building in order to learn how to avoid the scaffolding step, but I'm not even there yet. I'm just telling you that's the consequence, the logical consequence of everything I've laid out before you. So I could be wrong, but it's a logical consequence nonetheless, regardless of how right or wrong it might be. And so that's my advice to you. That's how complicated free energy circuits are, according to nonlinear dynamics. The free energy circuitry of thermodynamics is a dumb flashlight circuit. It's so simple that a dummy could do it. And most employees hired by the utility company are dumb. They're told what to do and they do it, and they don't question authority, and they're perfect corporate peons. They just do what they're told. Or they're materialistic and insecure of themselves. For whatever the reason, they do what they're told. I think that's everything I can think of to tell you. But it's good that somebody made this comment and brought it up to jog my memory, because, there's so many aspects of this subject that I don't remember. They're not in the forefront of my awareness, but I've already learned them years ago, and many of them I've forgotten, and I have to be reminded when I see old videos or whatever that are still there on the internet and haven't been taken down yet. Not because they're free energy circuits, but because I do other things in that YouTube channel that causes the channel to be erased. I do a lot of avant-garde things, not just free energy. So I offend a lot of tastes. A lot of different people of different variable tastes. Anywho, and not just on YouTube. I've used to do it on Quora, but Quora has learned to... I've learned how to deal with Quora, and Quora is okay with that. So, but YouTube's a different matter. YouTube is under fire. I think it's a special interest group. I don't think it's the powers that be. I think it's a private industry took offense that I am blazing or spreading how they do what they do. Now, they have it patented, and it's a secret what their whole protocol is for producing their product. But they give away some of the knowledge in order to put it in the patent, and I read the patent, and I did what was available in the patent. And I came up with a product that's not like theirs at all. It's an inferior version. But they took offense. I'm assuming this is what has happened. And they threatened YouTube with a lawsuit. And so YouTube is taking down a lot of my videos in which I discuss silver. And then it's spread like a virus. They're taking down any video in which I give health advice based on my own experience, not based on my theories or beliefs. And yet, we got to make YouTube a safe community, so we got to take down your videos. Objecting is a waste of time because they're being threatened with a lawsuit from a private company. It has nothing to do with government. It doesn't have to be involved. A government doesn't have to be involved, whether or not it is. But a threatening lawsuit, that'll do it. Yet, it's merely competition. It's merely a threat. It's not like I gave away a secret because I don't know the company's secrets. I just know what they put in public domain when they published their patent and got a patent from the patent office for their product. I mean, come on. But this is the kind of worldly environment we live in. So I guess I have to give credit where credit is due. George Bush Jr. was correct when he said we are living in a world in which we are threatened and so scared of lawsuits, and it's a pity that we are. Well, coming from him, I didn't think that much of advice, but it is the truth. Regardless of the wrong person doing the expanding, who should not be expanding like he's innocent or something, but whatever. He was right in that regard, in a limited way. Limited way of respectability. In any case, so that's what's been happening on YouTube for me, but which never happened. I put those videos up in 2017, and now India has taken, apparently, my advice, because I was the only person extensively prognosticating silver hydroperoxide. But India is now manufacturing it, and because U.S. patents do not apply to India, it's really a national, it's a bounded condition in which YouTube is making war against my videos, because it has nothing to do with India or Indian videos. And I don't even know if there is an analog for YouTube in India in which my videos on silver would be safe, on silver hydroperoxide would be safe. I don't know. But that's what I'm going through with YouTube. But in any case, I'm a little off topic here. What's that thing called? Scaffolding. So that's the problem with free energy simulations, is that they are artificial because the simulator is propping up the circuit that we simulate with a scaffolding of its own nature, its own existence as a simulator. It's a consequence of the simulator running the circuit. The scaffolding is there, and there's no way you can remove it. It's there. Now, if you design a circuit like a flashlight circuit, then we know how to build it without the scaffolding, and it works just fine. But we don't know how to build a free energy circuit without the scaffolding presence of the simulator. And so it's not fine. We still have more skills to learn. And that's the procedure I'm laying out for you, to build those skills so that you can build circuits without a scaffolding. You can design a circuit without the need of a simulator to help you do it. But most of us need simulators, and then we don't know how to translate that simulation into the real world. And so now this is what this recording is all about, how to do the translation and eventually get out from under the scaffolding and work without simulators if we wish to. If we can, I mean, if the circuit is simple enough, in essence, before we start making it complicated with all kinds of tweaks and twiddles, flourishes, polishing the polish that we add to it. All right, enough said.